In the method, we use a thing called affective memory. And basically, affective memory is a way of triggering your emotions at will. So that when you're on set or when you're on stage, you're able to actually become emotional on cue, on demand. Now, it's not as hard as you might think, because you might think that sounds quite difficult to do, especially with the pressure of cameras and lights and people wanting things from you. So basically, what you have to understand is how the brain works. Because in order to become emotional, you have to work with the way that the brain works. So if we look at the brain here, we've got a right side and a left side. Now, the left side is more logical and analytical. It's a kind of part of your brain where you're trying to work out logical problems. That's the part of the brain that you work. And the way that is triggered is through written and verbal commands. Written and verbal. To trigger the right side of the brain, which is emotional, and that's where all your emotions are fired up. Basically, that side of the brain works with visual, sounds, touch, smell, and taste, basically the senses. So when you're trying to recreate emotion, you can't actually send a verbal command to your brain to become emotional. So if I was to say to you, get you up here and say, right, okay, I want you to be really, I want you to cry. And you said to yourself, right, I've got to get really upset and I've got to cry. That triggers the wrong side of the brain, triggers the left side of the brain. And it goes, well, I don't know how to do that because that's not where the emotions live. However, if I said to you, got you up here and said, right, I want you to think about a time where you were very unhappy. And you start to think about that, and you start to visualize it, and you start to see it in your mind's eye. You start to smell the smells that happened at that point. You start to remember the things that you touched, the smells that were happening in the room. So I just want you to demonstrate this to you, because actually affective memory is something that happens to you a lot throughout your life. You might have, for example, remember a piece of music from a long time ago, and it reminds you of somebody else. This is what a lot of the top actors in the world use in order to trigger emotion. They start to re-experience moments from their life where they had the same emotion as the character, and they start to relive it in their mind. And they train themselves to go through it through the senses. Now that might sound quite easy, but it's actually very difficult. And usually takes people a lot of time to train themselves to be able to do it. You might be able to do it off the cuff once or twice, but to be able to do it consistently requires training. You need to do it a lot in order to get to that point. But that's basically how it works. And that's very important in order to become emotional as an actor.